By the time the woman in the worn canvas sneakers reached the front of the showroom floor, three salespeople had already looked away. Not the kind of looking away that happens when someone is busy. The kind that is a decision. She was somewhere in her mid-40s, and she wore the kind of clothes that said she hadn't thought too hard about what she put on that morning. Dark jeans, a gray zip-up hoodie, with a faded university logo across the chest, hair pulled back in a low bun that had mostly survived the day. She carried a canvas tote bag on one shoulder. The bag had a coffee stain near the bottom that had been washed but never quite disappeared. She stood near the centerpiece of the showroom, a pearl-white luxury SUV sitting on a raised platform spotlit from above, turning slowly on a motorized base like something holy. And she looked at it with the kind of focused stillness that most people reserve for problems they are already solving. Nobody came. There were 4 other customers in the showroom that Saturday afternoon. A couple in resort wear, who had come in from the marina, the man's hand resting at the small of the woman's back, their laughter easy and practiced. A young professional in a fitted blazer who had already been handed a pricing brochure and a bottle of sparkling water. An older gentleman in pressed khakis being led toward the back office. She stood alone near the rotating SUV for 4 minutes, she counted. His name was Garrett, and he had worked at Halcyon Motor Group's flagship Toronto location for 6 years. He was 29, good-looking in a careful sort of way, and he had never once in those 6 years failed to read a room. He prided himself on it. He could tell within 30 seconds of someone walking through the door whether they were serious buyers or what he privately called window people, the ones who came in to touch things, to feel briefly adjacent to a life they were not going to purchase. The woman in the gray hoodie was, in his assessment, a window person. He made his way toward her anyway, because the floor manager, a compact and watchful man named Dennis, had been drifting closer in that particular way that meant someone needed to move. Garrett straightened his jacket and crossed the polished concrete. "Can I help you find something?" he said, and the way he said it, the slight pause before something, the mild upward inflection, communicated, with surgical efficiency, that what he actually meant was, "Are you sure you're supposed to be in here?" The woman turned and looked at him. Her eyes were calm, not the performed calm of someone suppressing anger, but the real kind. The kind that comes from having decided, long ago, that other people's confusion about you is their problem to carry, not yours. "I'd like to look at the Meridian line," she said, "the full size, both trims." Garrett smiled with his mouth. "Of course. Are you looking for yourself or for myself?" "Great." He reached for one of the laminated spec sheets from the stand behind him and held it out. "These start at just under 110. Just so you have a sense of the, I know what they cost," she said. She took the spec sheet, glanced at it for about 4 seconds, and set it back on the stand. "I'd rather see the vehicles," she said. "Can you open the touring model? I want to see the cargo configuration." Garrett looked at her for a beat too long. Then he nodded and said he'd be right back. Dennis had been watching from the service desk. He was not a cruel man. He did not think of himself as someone who made those kinds of judgments about people. But he had a showroom to run and a Saturday afternoon to manage, and when Garrett came to find him near the back, Dennis listened to the quiet 2-sentence summary and made a quiet 2-second decision. "Just keep it brief," Dennis said. "Don't pull the touring out of the bay. Show her the floor models." Garrett went back. The woman was standing near the window now, looking out at the lot. She had her phone out, but she wasn't scrolling. She was reading something, her thumb barely moving. "So we actually have the touring currently in our secondary lot for detailing," Garrett said. It was not entirely untrue. There was a touring model in the secondary lot. It was not being detailed. "But I can walk you through the floor model here, and if you decide you'd like to. Is it available for a test drive?" He paused. "We'd need to pull a credit pre-approval before. I'm paying cash," she said. There was a silence. "For the vehicle," she added, in case there was any ambiguity. Garrett felt the conversation tip in a direction he wasn't sure how to navigate. He excused himself a second time. What happened next took less than 40 seconds, and was witnessed by the couple from the marina, the young professional with the sparkling water, and two members of the service team who had drifted to the edge of the showroom floor. Dennis came out from behind the service desk. He walked to where the woman was standing, near the rotating SUV, and he spoke to her in a low voice that was clearly meant to be low. The kind of low that is actually its own form of volume. "Ma'am, I need to ask you to move along. We have a full floor today, and our team is occupied with other customers." She looked at him. He did not look away, but something behind his eyes shifted. "I'm a customer," she said. "We appreciate you coming in, but I think maybe what you're looking for is. I told your colleague I want to see the Meridian touring. I said I'm paying cash." Her voice was still even, still calm. "What exactly is the problem?" Dennis straightened. "I'd ask you not to make a scene." She had not raised her voice. She had not moved. She had not made anything. She looked at him for a moment longer. Then she picked up her canvas tote from the floor, settled the strap over her shoulder, and walked out through the glass front doors without another word. The door closed behind her with a soft hydraulic hiss. In the showroom, someone coughed. The SUV on the platform continued its slow, indifferent rotation. Outside, she stood on the pavement for a moment. The October air was sharp and clean. A streetcar groaned past on the main road. She watched it go. She did not cry. She did not make a phone call to vent. She did not post anything. She thought, briefly, of the first car she had ever saved up to buy. A '97 Civic, with a cracked dashboard and a heater that worked on one side only, and of the particular feeling of sitting in it in a parking lot after a double shift, eating a gas station sandwich and feeling, for the first time, like something was possible. She had been 22. She had been working 2 jobs and taking night classes and mailing rent checks that she wrote carefully so they wouldn't bounce. She thought of all that for about 30 seconds. Then she opened her phone and made one call. Her name was Kofi, Akofia Mensima Darko, though she had gone by Kofi since she was 7 years old, when her younger brother couldn't say her full name and the shortened version stuck in a way that felt more like her anyway. She was 43. She had grown up in the Regent Park neighborhood of Toronto, in a 2-bedroom apartment that housed, depending on the year, between 4 and 7 people, not all of them related by blood, all of them connected by the particular logic of people who help each other survive. Her mother had worked nights. Her father had left when she was 9 and returned when she was 26, and by then she had learned to keep a certain distance between herself and the possibility of being surprised by people. She had built her first software product at 24 on a second-hand laptop at the public library on Garrard Street. She had launched it from her kitchen table. She had grown it slowly, and then quickly, and then it had become something she had not entirely predicted, which was large, very large. Kofi Mensima Darko was, as of that Saturday afternoon, the founder and majority shareholder of Meridian Dynamics, a logistics software company with offices in Toronto, Calgary, and Waterloo, a valuation north of $2 billion, and a client list that included some of the largest fleet operators in North America. One of those clients was Halcyon Motor Group. She had been in discussions with Halcyon's parent company for the better part of 4 months about a partnership that would integrate Meridian's fleet management software across all 22 of Halcyon's dealerships in Ontario. It was the kind of contract that, for Halcyon, would have meant a multi-year exclusive arrangement worth tens of millions. For Meridian, it was useful but not essential. There were other players who wanted what she had. She had come into the Toronto flagship that Saturday alone, without announcing herself, the way she sometimes did when she wanted to understand a business from the ground up before signing anything. She had wanted to see how they treated people. She had her answer. The call she made from the pavement lasted 7 minutes. She spoke to her head of partnerships, a sharp and methodical woman named Priscilla, who had been with Meridian since the early days, and had learned to read the specific register of Kofi's voice, the way you learn to read weather. "Pull the Halcyon file," Kofi said. There was a brief silence on the other end. "All of it?" Priscilla asked. "All of it." Another pause. Do you want to? No, Kofi said. I don't want to discuss it yet. Just pull it. She hung up and hailed a cab. On Monday morning, Halcyon Motor Group's regional VP of partnerships, a man named Stewart who wore his optimism about the Meridian deal openly and had already told his superiors it was essentially done, received an email at 8:47 a.m. The email was from Meridian Dynamics' legal team. It was 4 paragraphs long and written in the kind of precise, unembellished language that leaves no room for misunderstanding. It stated that Meridian Dynamics was withdrawing from the partnership discussions, effective immediately, and that the company would not be re-engaging with Halcyon Motor Group or any of its subsidiaries at this time. No reason was given. Stewart read it 3 times. Then he walked to his office window and stood there for a while. He called Priscilla. She did not answer. He sent an email. He received a brief, polite acknowledgement that said Meridian's position was final and they wished Halcyon well. By noon, word had moved through the building. By 2 o'clock, Dennis had been called into a meeting with the regional director. By 4 o'clock, Garrett was sitting in the break room with his jacket still on, turning his phone over in his hands, trying to work out the exact sequence of events, and where in that sequence something had gone irretrievably wrong. Halcyon's parent company had been in quiet discussions with 3 other technology partners, but the Meridian integration had been the one with real momentum, the one with real specificity, the software already mapped to their systems, the pilot already planned. Losing it was not fatal, but it was costly, and the way it was lost, without warning, without negotiation, without even a named grievance, made it difficult to address. You cannot fix a problem you are not allowed to see clearly. The regional director asked Dennis to walk him through Saturday afternoon. Dennis did. The regional director listened carefully. Then he was quiet for a long moment, and she said she was paying cash, he said. She said that, yes, Dennis said, and you asked her to leave. I asked her to. Dennis stopped. He restarted. I assessed the situation, and Dennis. The regional director set his pen down on the desk. Who do you think we lost? Dennis didn't answer, because by then someone had sent him the article. It had gone up on a business news site Sunday evening. Someone had recognized Kofi Mensah Darko coming out of the Halcyon showroom, a person who lived nearby and followed the Toronto tech scene closely enough to know who she was. Even in jeans and a gray hoodie, they had posted about it, not accusingly, just as a note. The note had been picked up by a reporter who had called Meridian's communications team for comment. The communications team had given no comment. The silence had, in the way that silences sometimes do, communicated everything. The article was headlined, Meridian's Mensah Darko ends, Halcyon talks after reported showroom incident. Sources say deal was weeks from signing. It ran on a Monday. By Tuesday, it had been picked up by 4 other outlets and 1 national business publication. By Wednesday, it had been shared on LinkedIn so many times that Kofi's name had begun appearing in the autocomplete of the search bar. She did not comment. She did not post. She did not grant interviews. Her silence did the same work it had always done. Garrett resigned on the Thursday. He did not make a statement. He packed the 2 personal items he had on his desk, a phone charger and a small plant that had somehow survived 6 years under fluorescent light. And he left. Dennis was placed on administrative review. The showroom hired a consultant to conduct a diversity and customer service audit. The consultant was thorough. The findings were not comfortable. The report made 11 recommendations, and the first one was the most basic and the hardest to argue with. Every person who walks through the door is a customer until have been served and have declined to purchase. The report did not mention Kofi by name. It did not need to. Stewart from Partnerships sent Kofi a formal letter in November. It acknowledged what had happened, offered an apology on behalf of Halcyon's leadership, and expressed hope that she would consider a future conversation. She read it. She appreciated that it was a real apology, specific, unqualified, not dressed up as a misunderstanding. She thought about it. She filed it. She had other things to build. 3 months later, Meridian Dynamics signed a similar fleet management contract with a competing automotive group. a smaller company, privately held, based partly in Mississauga. The terms were comparable. The people she met during the process were straightforward and curious, and asked good questions and offered decent coffee, without making a production of it. At the signing lunch, the company's founder, a second-generation Lebanese-Canadian man in his 50s who had started by detailing cars on weekends, shook her hand and said, "I read about what happened. I'm glad you ended up here." Kofi smiled. "I usually end up where I'm supposed to," she said. It was the truest thing she had said about the whole situation. She still drove a Civic, not the '97 with the cracked dashboard that had long since been retired, but a newer one, sensible and reliable, the kind of car that does what it promises and doesn't make a fuss. Her assistant had offered, more than once, to arrange something else. Something more suited, she said carefully, to where Kofi was now. Kofi always said the same thing. The car gets her where she's going. She was not unaware that this was also how she thought about most things. What nobody wrote about, in any of the articles, was what had happened on the pavement outside the showroom in those 30 seconds before she made the call. They wrote about the deal, the dollar amounts, the corporate fallout. They wrote about the audit and the resignation and the apology letter. A few of them wrote thoughtfully about what the incident revealed, about the persistent, specific exhaustion of being a black woman in certain rooms. The way you have to absorb the cost of other people's assumptions before you've even had the chance to buy anything. All of that was true. All of that mattered. But what nobody wrote about was the 30 seconds. The streetcar, the October air, the memory of a gas station sandwich and a cracked dashboard and a feeling, at 22, that something was possible. She had not been angry, standing on that pavement. Or rather, she had been, in the way that people who have lived long enough with a particular kind of disrespect carry it as a low and steady frequency beneath everything else. What she had felt, more precisely, was tired. The specific tiredness of having to decide, again, how to respond to something that should not have happened in the first place. She had decided the way she always decided, quietly, completely, and without apology. That was the whole story. It just didn't make for a clean headline. Months later, she was asked to speak at a conference in Ottawa, a panel on entrepreneurship and systemic barriers in the tech sector. She had done these before, and she agreed to this one because she respected the organization running it and because she had something she wanted to say. A young woman in the audience asked her, near the end, what advice she would give to someone who kept being underestimated. Kofi thought about it for a moment. "Let them," she said. "Not because it doesn't matter. It does. But because you can spend your energy arguing with their ceiling, or you can spend it raising yours. Those are different projects." She paused. "And then do business somewhere else." The room laughed. Then it went quiet in the way that rooms go quiet when something true has just been said out loud and everyone is deciding what to do with it. Kofi picked up her water glass. Outside the conference center, the Ottawa River moved through the late afternoon light, gray and certain and entirely unimpressed by anything happening on its banks, which was, she had always thought, the correct attitude.